welcome everyone who's joining. Thank you for joining. We're going to give people a few minutes to come in. You can see the numbers are going up. Hope you've had a good day at the conference. Yeah, please do introduce yourself in the chat. Share any details as you'd like. Use it to network. Great. So welcome to everyone who's still joining. We're still going to give it a moment or two more people to come through. If you do want to share, say hello in the chat, please do so. We can use that to post any thoughts as we go as well. Put your any details where you work and your job titles. Okay, we seem to have slowed down. So what I think we should maybe do is make a start. Carl, do you think so?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let's get going.
Okay. So welcome everyone. So today we're going to work through some slides and some case studies or stories of experience, and talk about systems change and how we can explore systems leadership from frontline practitioners' perspective. And as you see, so changing the narrative from troubled system and shifting it away from troubled person. So we'll run through a few of these. So Carl, do you want to go into the next slide? So this is the little rundown for today. So we're going to do some introductions of us. So you see there's 4 of us here. Going to look at the MEAM view of systems. Going to look at a couple of case studies or stories of experience. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion and Q&A. So there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if you have thoughts and questions around what we're talking about as we go, please do put them in there. Put the questions in there, and then we'll try and work through those as much as we can towards the end of the session, and then we will be finishing at 4 o'clock. Okay, great. So let's introduce ourselves. So Princess, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi there. My name is Princess Okwuonu. So I'm a MEAM coordinator from Medway down in Kent.
And Sarah? Oh, Sarah, you're on mute.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sarah Mackintosh. I'm a MEAM coordinator from Notts County Council. I lead the MEAM approach in social care. It's an emerging area of social work. We're really excited to be doing such, challenging and groundbreaking work. So, hi, everyone.
And then it's me. So I'm the Partnerships Development Manager. I work with the MEAM Approach Network across England. My main focus is on new areas joining the network. And then Carl.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Carl Brown. I'm a Systems Practice Manager with MEAM. We'll talk a little bit in a minute about what MEAM is if you're not already aware. And you'll also get a sense of the type of work that I do. But I basically work intensely with a number of areas to transform their systems to improve outcomes for people who experience multiple disadvantage. So really glad to be here.
Great. Next slide, Carl. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about MEAM. We won't dwell on this too much because I really invite you to go and have a look at our website as well. So MEAM is a coalition. It's of Mind, Collective Voice, Homeless Link and Clinks. So it's formed 15 years ago. This is our 15-year anniversary as a response to siloed working in commissioning. I think it was this will resonate with many of you, the understanding that we're all working with good hearts, good intentions often, but we're often working separately and not collaboratively across the system and not in partnership. And as a consequence, we don't get the best results for the people we're seeking to support. People fall through the gaps and we kind of lose momentum. So it's very much about working with place-based partnerships. We work with groups of professionals and people with lived experience looking to embed co-production, for instance, within that as much as possible. and to work with areas to really look at how they can transform their local systems and do things differently, really understand from the walking the walk alongside people as they traverse the local system, trying to access the support they need from services, and really draw in learning from their lived experience to help reshape and reframe the system. And that's through a process of working both at an operational level to look at how we can flex the system in individual cases, but also then using that learning of where that flexing worked and where it didn't work to influence and shape policy and strategy by working with senior leaders in the system as well. So yeah, that's where we are. So we currently work with 42 areas. We're just in the process now of recruiting 10 new areas. I've been up to my knees or up to my ears in that recently. We've just closed the expression of interest process now. And as you can see, we're across England. Eventually, we may work in Wales and in Scotland and North of Ireland as well, but not quite there yet. Some of these partnerships have been running for many years, been working since 2009. For instance, in the Cambridge and Peterborough partnership, I think was a pilot in 2009, and some of them are newer. There are some that are less active and some that are more active. So if you see that you're based in one of those areas and you'd like to reach out to your local MEAM network, MEAM partnership, please do drop us an email or a message in the chat, and we'll try and pick those up. And I can put my email in the chat as well, and we can try and link you and connect you in if possible, if that would be useful. We also support Changing Futures areas, and there are 15 of those across the country. So we are the commissioned provider of developmental support in the background with those areas, and that's the Changing Futures approach is very similar to MEAM in many ways, obviously, and it is quite highly funded by DLUC and the government. So what you see on the right hand side of the picture there is the MEAM wheel, as we call it. This is a tool that we use to work with areas to explore how they approach multiple disadvantage in their area, what kind of activities that might look like. And often you'll see the first part of the wheel is partnerships. It's too small for me to read. Partnerships, vision, and co-production. And that's often where we start, because it's about looking at how we work together and how we relate to each other and the relationships that can help us create change at a local level, and embedding within that the voice of lived experience, as alongside creating a shared vision for change and understanding where we want to be. I won't go through all of those, but this is a model that we use, and it's very much the MEAM approach is very much an approach. It's not a rigid way of working. And it's very much about embedding people's lived experience at the center of how we reframe and reshape systems. Okay, Carl, yeah, go on. Over to you, Carl.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Greg. Just to say, if Greg mentioned, if you are if you operate within any of these areas, and of course reach out to us and we can link you in, but also if you don't operate within any of these areas that are listed here, but you're interested in the work that we do, then feel free to reach out to us all the same, and we can have a chat and speak about some of the offers that we have around training and consultancy, and you can also sign up as a supporter, but I'll give a link at the end of the session as well, where you'll be able to stay linked into the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
So just to touch on what our vision is really at MEAM, it's quite simple. It's that in every local area, people experiencing multiple disadvantage are supported by effective, coordinated services and empowered to tackle their problems and reach their full potential and contribute fully to their communities. And to achieve this, we support local areas across England to make long-term sustainable changes to local systems. And we use our shared knowledge and practical experience from this work to influence policy at both national and local levels, as Greg was just touching on. So you'll hear this term multiple disadvantage that we use within MEAM. And this is just a little bit about what we mean by that, really. So our definition is that people facing multiple disadvantage experience a combination of problems. And for many, their current circumstances are shaped by long-term experiences of poverty and deprivation, trauma, abuse, and neglect. But many also face racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and so on. And it's these structural inequalities that intersect in different ways, and they manifest in a combination of experiences, including homelessness, substance misuse, domestic violence, contact with the criminal justice system, and mental ill health. And so really multiple disadvantages are systemic, not an individual issue. And people are failed by services and systems that seek to ignore the complexity of what it is to be human, really. And often we focus on singular issues, and that makes it harder for individuals to address their problems and lead fulfilling lives and ultimately contribute fully to their communities. So just a little bit on our view of systems within the field of multiple disadvantage. Historically, the way that we have dealt with that human complexity is to basically ignore it, to simplify it and break it down and break the system down into specialized and segmented areas. And we end up with something that looks like this here. So this is where it sort of shows that services are designed and commissioned and delivered in silos. And this isn't to say that there isn't lots of excellent work taking place and good quality support being delivered by people on the front line. And, you know, there's lots of practice innovation taking place at various different levels. However, what we tend to find is that each silo is created to respond to a single isolated issue rather than the whole picture of an individual's experience and need. And what often goes hand in hand with this is that services are also often built around the needs of the service rather than the individual. And on the whole, we know that we exist in systems that often focus on deficits rather than strengths, and are guided by approaching individuals of problems to be fixed, and often lacking in approaches that view people seeking support as the whole human beings, with, you know, complex histories and experiences that really we should be taken into account, and they should be recognised and understood. And it's these traditional ways of working that can often then add to people's problems. And we've all heard of the frustrations expressed by people feeling let down by the very services that are out there to support them. So this is about systems leadership. So just a little bit on the kind of leadership that we tend to see to drive this type of systems change, before we touch on those case studies, which will really bring this to life, I think. But we tend to think of leadership from, you know, a senior position, someone who sits at the top of an organisation, and that comes with authority to make decisions and then have those decisions executed by other people. Systems change is about leading across boundaries, really, which means that often you'll lead with very little authority. You know, if you sit within the criminal justice sector and you're seeking to lead across boundaries, and it doesn't matter what level you sit within your own organisation or within your own sector, you'll have little authority within, you know, homelessness sector, for example. And so when we seek to address really large scale challenges and we want to make a big difference, there's a need for methodologies and approaches that are significantly different from traditional ones. And also within that, a different way of thinking and different mindsets. And we need different organisational behaviour. And within that, we need a sort of new kind of leadership. And it's that type of leadership which we're referring to as systems leadership. And this is, you know, it's significantly different from business as usual. So as I say, it's about working across boundaries and addressing wicked challenges that requires capacities that go far beyond that of any one organisation. And it requires something of an ecosystem approach to support. And within that, then it supports ongoing learning and co-creating amongst a network of various different actors. So for me, I'll just touch on a couple of things within systems leadership that I think is important, and what I often see across the MEAM network. I think that it boils down to 3 key points, I suppose, for me. The first one is really about having an ability or a willingness to see and act from the whole. And this means understanding the bigger picture and looking at the forest, not just the trees, and then making decisions that are based on that. And next, I think there's something about creating conditions for growth and emergence. And this involves building new capacities within the system and connecting diverse groups and empowering others. And it's about bringing people together and working across boundaries. So in this sense, systems leaders are really facilitators who help ideas form and then, develop networks around those. And then finally, there's something about transformative change in all of this, and systems leaders often aim to change the whole system and not just tweak parts of it. They're sort of driven by that wider ambition, if you like. So that's just a couple of the key things that that I noticed from across the network. And the way that we seek to develop systems leadership within local areas is through this tool here, what we call the MEAM intervention tool. So there are many different tools and various different schools of systems thinking, as well as sort of a wide range of frameworks that you may be familiar with. And it's important, I think, for individuals and individual areas to explore and find the right tool that matches the discipline or the sector that you work in. But this approach is one that can certainly, get people started and has proved to be useful. So it's a 4-part cyclical framework for intervening in systems, and often in systems that don't work for people facing multiple disadvantage. And it helps local areas tackle complex problems. It's an iterative process of building the right group of people and diving deep to explore the problem area, and then developing an understanding of the connected issues that maintain the problem. And then it starts to sort of dig in and pilot new approaches, and then moves through to the final phase and really embeds the learning around that. And this framework builds on the cyclical nature of systems practice. There isn't never one solution within complex systems. So it's not necessarily seeking to fix something. There's no end point with this. Systems practice is very much an ongoing cycle of action learning, which crucially acknowledges a value in the learning, really, and that's the point of this tool. And in that way, this tool has been demonstrated to be, really good for framing those experiments and tests. So often, I think we can think about systems leadership as an approach for, getting people to, or a multi-agency partnership or group to go around this systems intervention loop. And as I say, it's an iterative process. So once you've completed the transformation journey, you've learned from it, you've developed some skills and a collective understanding of your system, then you just go back to the start, really, and start it all again and go through it again with a new partnership and bring more people around on the journey. So ultimately, the message that we try to put out there is that it's not about troubled individuals; it's a troubled system, and that's what we've titled this this presentation, if you like, today. Yeah, that's sort of our starting point, really. What I'd like to do now, though, is just pause for a moment and ask a question using Slido. So I'm sure that some of you will be familiar with Slido or Menti. It's the same sort of thing, really. All you have to do is either go to your web browser and type in slido.com. Then you'll need to enter the code that you can see in the red box, which is 8423093. Or you can simply just scan the QR code and that will take you directly to this question. So the question we want you to answer is, as a frontline practitioner, to what extent do you feel able to shape and influence local practice? So just jump on there. We'll go to the next slide, then it should show live updates as well. So just give you a minute to log in. If you're having any issues with Slido, then feel free to just dump your response to this in the chat, really. But it's a sliding scale, really. So we just want to know to what extent you feel able to shape or influence local practice. And it seems a lot of people are saying that they either have okay, yeah, so there's no one who feels that they have influence to to have a wider impact, it seems, so far. A lot of people saying that they have immediate influence over their own relationships and the work that they do, but no further than that, they don't necessarily see the impact of that, which is what we often see, and this is why we do the work that we do, really. That can obviously breed frustration in the work. It can lead you to feel that the work's, you're facing these barriers and they're really difficult to overcome. And it leads a lot of people, I think, to stepping outside of this sector, Just give it another couple of seconds, see if there's any further responses coming in there. Do you have any reflections on this at all, Greg, in terms of I think, like me, you won't be surprised to see that a lot of people have said that they feel that they have little influence to be able to shape or change their local policy and practice.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is the context, and we work in the frontline practitioners really aren't empowered to really make the changes in their local systems and to really drive things forward. I think we're often siloed off from the decision making and those influential spaces. Sarah, jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I just found that really interesting, because give it, a year ago, I would have definitely been saying that I'd got limited influence, even though I was in a position of, operation, team management, and often invited into strategic and developmental opportunities as well. But having been with the MEAM, and I know I'm not getting any bonuses for saying this, I'm sure, but I can honestly say that it's taken months of hard work, but as a practitioner, I'm starting to feel so much more impactful and so much more influential, as trust amongst colleagues in different roles and areas has started to form. And, it's not an easy journey, but it's extremely satisfying when you get out of bed in the morning and you think, thank goodness I've got the magic wand of MEAM, because that's sometimes how it feels. That's how supportive it is. So back to your original statement about we're all in it for the same reason, to do to make life better for everybody, staff, people, communities. It really has been a gift to be able to be part of such a strong, I'd almost call it a movement, really. But anyway,
that's wonderful to hear. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
I'll get my gift voucher later.
Yeah.
I put it in the chat. Your cash is in the envelope. So.
That's really nice to hear.
Go on, Carl.
I was just gonna say that's why we do this work, isn't it? And it's really good. It's a ringing endorsement, really, for the work that we do. And as you say, it's incredibly challenging. It's not all plain sailing, and I'm sure that some of that will come out in a moment in the case studies. But thank you, Sarah. Really nice to hear. Okay. Go on, sorry,
no, I was just going to say, if you scroll to the bottom, the other end of that scale there, Carl. So, I guess what we would aspire to is where practitioners and alongside people with lived experience as well, and people that's working at a strategic level, feel that they can have an influence both across their local system and even on a regional and a national space as well. So, a big part of what we want to do as MEAM is to draw out your local learning from local areas and translate that into our policy work, where we influence and try and help government rethink what they're doing, that then has a wider, maximizes that impact and reduce that gap between what you're experiencing in your day-to-day practice when you're struggling to get benefits appointments or access healthcare for the people you're supporting. Actually reduce that gap between what you're experiencing and what is sitting on the desk of our MPs, basically those decision makers who are funneling money and policies down from the top. So yeah,
brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Greg. I think what we'll do now then is, I think that neatly lines us up to move on to the case studies. I think the first case study is Princess, so I'm going to shut up for a while and listen to Princess. Over to you, Princess. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. So my case study is the problem, not the person. So if I could just flip the slide, please. And my background is criminal justice, and I have had the pleasure of working with this person for more than 7 years in different aspects of my role. This gentleman, I'm going to call him Client X. Can I have the next slide, please? And this guy is 48 years old, and he's been in the criminal justice system since the age of 18. So he's been in and out of prison for most of his life. So what we would say is he served a life sentence within his life. He's got learning difficulties. So whilst in custody, he gets all the support. So he's recognized by the learning disability team, by the mental health team. He is known by every single person. But the stress we have, or he has, is that when he's in custody, he receives all the support from every single agency. Unfortunately, when he's released from prison, they tend to think that he's been cured. Nobody's working with him. The services say he no longer has learning disability. He's no longer got mental health issues. Our housing is secured and everything like this, but this is not the case. So we found that every year of his life, he was in and out of prison, in and out of prison. So it wasn't until we picked him up as a MEAM client that we actually had to sit down and try and put things together for this gentleman. And I believe it started right in custody. I don't know if I need the next slide to just pick up on what I need to say. So the barriers we faced was the revolving door of him going in and out of prison, how to resolve that. That was one of the barriers. Because he was in custody, everything was working for him. As soon as he came out, there was no housing, there was no learning disability team, no support from mental health services. So that was one of the difficulties. Can I have the next slide just to pick up? All right, so what I'm saying here is that there was no support from the learning disability team in the community. Referrals were made in prison for him to bring out into the community, but that wasn't taken up. I wouldn't say nobody seemed to want to take up that position, but nobody did. Everybody thought they were doing the work, but nobody was doing the work. It's like having a goat in a village and everybody thinks that goat has been fed, but nobody has fed that goat. So one of the issues we were facing was this early release system that they had going on. So we tried to round up every single agency working with this gentleman in custody. The issue we had was actually meeting up with him in custody. So that was the difficulty that we faced. The way that we could overcome that was we built a relationship with the prisoners, the prison governor and his offender manager. So as the relationship built up, we were able to go in and meet up with this gentleman on a regular basis. So that built up our support network with him, built up a relationship with him, because that was the main thing that we needed for him to trust us and for the service in custody to trust us as well with the work that we were doing. So I think one of the problems we had was that he was to be released, let's say, in a week's time. But because of the early release program, he was to be released early. But for the relationship that we had with the prison governor and his offender manager, we were able to hold him back until things were put in place in the community for him. So how we managed to do this was bring in all the different services together, set up meetings on a weekly basis to discuss his case, and put ownership on each agency on what they were going to do for him whilst he was in custody, and then support him immediately he was released from prison. Because we had noticed over the years he had been in custody, as soon as he came out to nothing. And because of his learning disability, he had a mental age of a 7-year-old. Being a 48-year-old, that is something totally different and difficult for this guy. So we brought everybody around the table to support him and put ownership on every single agency to ensure that they were working for him. And that meant getting them to understand what his needs were. So most of these agencies, you know, they have their policy and their procedure, but we were able to get them to, would I say, bend and flex, just to support him, not to change things around, but to make it work for him. So, you know, where agencies or services were working in silos, they now work together on that round table where we met every week. So every week, somebody or everybody will come back with what they had found, what they were going to change, how they were going to support him. Another issue was that because he had learning difficulties, he was challenging. I don't know, people or organizations tend to work with people that are less challenging. It makes life easier for them. They fail to understand that we're in a world of complexity. We work with complex people. So getting them to understand that we are working with complex people, they change their way around working with this gentleman. Another issue that we had was his tag. Lately, he's quite a large gentleman. So he was supposed to have a tag as soon as he got released from custody. Unfortunately, they said that the tag, the straps to the tag was too small, so he couldn't have it done. Unfortunately for us, this is when he started self-harming, because he needed that assurance that he was tagged and he could go wherever he wanted. Without that tag, he couldn't move. So we were facing that challenge of getting the tag people to put the tag on so this guy can move around. Another issue we had was about his actual learning difficulties not being recognized. I think people only recognize the physical disability and not the mental disability of people. So it's getting organizations, people, staffs, members, and everybody else to understand and recognize the word learning difficulty. It's hidden, but it is there. It's the same as physical, but it's just different. So that's one of the barriers that we faced. And in general, carers working for him, not understanding the kind of person he was or the kind of person he is. You know, they were working on the pretense that he wasn't complex, but he was very complex. So these are the barriers that we faced. Next slide, please, Carl. So we're looking at what went right or what we managed to do or try to support. Next slide. So as I mentioned before, we built a very, very good relationship with the prison, you know, giving us access to work with him, supporting our his best interest. That was another thing. I also mentioned about getting professionals together, you know, in a round table on a weekly basis. Because prior to that, they were not having meetings as they were working in silos. Everybody thought they were doing what they were supposed to be doing for this gentleman, but this was only happening in custody. In the community, they felt that as soon as he was released from prison, he was healed. He wasn't. He still needed that support. Part of that, what also went well is having a social worker from the MMDN group that provided all the insights on working with this gentleman, having the care assessments. It was like having the opportunity to speak to people and then giving us further advice, actually supporting this gentleman without cutting a red tape. It was just like walking through a door. We got specialists from the learning difficulty team to come and assess him without being on that waiting list for months and months and months. On release, we were able to get him accommodation. So instead of him being transferred to a hotel, trashing that up, he actually had accommodation where there was support for him on tap 24/7. I also pointed out that we had the MMDT's meetings. MDT meetings where people were throwing everything they had on the table, and we were able to deal with issues, you know, answer questions that needed to be answered and provide this young man with support. Yeah, and then the social worker performed, you know, would I say miracles in my way? But as a team, we brought people together, you know, brought an industry together to work in the factory. So that's how things worked out for us down here in Medway, and we're still pushing forward. Thanks. Any questions?
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Princess. We'll hear from Sarah first, and then we'll have any questions. I invite anyone, if any questions do come up whilst Sarah's talking, or if there are any questions from Princess, and please do put those into the chat box now or whenever you feel free. But yeah, we'll hand over to Sarah now. Thanks so much, Princess.
You're welcome.
Right, thanks, Princess. That was really interesting, and I hope it's going to be a hard act to follow. But I've got a lady called Pam. We try really hard to be conscious about our language in Nottinghamshire, and when we're trying to develop relationships with other organisations, we want to bond with them by trying to get rid of the idea that somebody is nothing other than a person. So Pam is not her real name. Next slide, please. And in Nottinghamshire, we're doing deep dives into 15 people in total over the next few months, into people with SMD, severe multiple disadvantage, we call it in Nottinghamshire, because many people fit into multiple disadvantage, but we're talking about the most challenged individuals, and like Princess has talked about as well, those revolving doors. Where are we going to find the circuit breaker? And so Pam is one of the cohort of people that we're doing a deep dive into to find out why she's continued to go round and round and be failed and is on a really, really negative pathway. So Pam's a woman in her late 20s. She was facing significant difficulties when I met her with her within a relationship with her partner, fairly new relationship. There's a history of serious domestic abuse in this year-long relationship, and that's to date. I met them 6 months ago, say. Both emotionally and physically, the relationship was really poor. Pam also experienced abusive relationships in the past, and has been badly beaten and featured, and those relationships also featured chronic addictions. Not unlike Pam, her parents, experienced Pam's life, and her ability to have relationships seemed to be following that pattern. There was a background of childhood trauma, and parents had drug and substance alcohol use as well. A few years ago, sadly, Pam had 2 of her children removed. The trauma was significant, and Pam was diagnosed when she was younger with an emotionally unstable personality disorder. After finally leaving her husband, her mum tragically drank herself to death in her flat, and Pam and her sister found her several days later. Pam's life has featured people dying, people being addicted, abuse, bullying, neglect. It was no surprise that she was reacting and being the way that she was. When contact was made with Pam to join the MEAM cohort, she was heavily pregnant and had retracted all reports that she had made regarding abuse by her partner, instead professing the complete opposite, that Ken was loyal and loved her and would do anything for her. Although she had previous alcohol issues, Ken introduced Pam to crack cocaine, and they described themselves as chronically addicted to this substance. This further complicated their relationship and their ability to make positive choices for themselves and their unborn child. The fact that they were homeless added another layer of instability and insecurity to their situation. And these challenges made it incredibly difficult for Pam to maintain a healthy and safe relationship with her partner. However, Pam reported feeling strongly that Ken kept her safe from harm during their homeless and rough sleeping days, something he constantly told her. "You won't be able to do it without me, Pam. Come on, Pam, we can smash it together." You know, incredible emotional pressure she had on her. And of course, the systems weren't there to catch her, and there was nothing on the table. So the only person that she really could rely on was her abusive partner. On referral, the MEAM social worker, me, developed a relationship with Pam and worked alongside the unborn baby's children's social care worker to advocate for Pam. The work was challenging, and at times the MEAM social worker, me, felt very overwhelmed by the risks that were being managed, including the high risk that Sam would take her own life, the risks associated with her emotional state, her trauma, and 2 very serious previous attempts on her life. I think it's quite interesting at this point just to give you a quick quote that's just sprung to my mind when I was talking to mental health services about my concerns, and they brushed me off with people with personality disorders often talk about suicide, but they never do it. Pam had in fact cut her throat and jumped off the top of a car park. So, and we're talking serious attempts. Very uncomfortable place to be sitting as a worker. Could I have the next slide, please, Carl? Sorry. So just at this moment, I've drawn a little picture because I'm a messy social worker, and I wouldn't be able to do this on a slide if you paid me. But I've got Pam here at the centre. There's the MEAM and myself here at the top, not because we're the greatest, but this is just the way it got drawn out. We've got baby over on the left, and we've got Ken over on the right. And these are all the different systems and authorities and pathways that were involved. But for most of the time, to cut a long story short, right through the process, it felt very much like it was down to Pam and me. I was working really hard to build a relationship between Pam and her health services over around the baby. I was working really hard to build relationships with the criminal justice system, where we had some brilliant results, by the way, and support in order to manage the domestic abuse aspect. We had women's aid worker at the beginning, but she fell away because Pam didn't want to engage because she didn't want to flee domestic violence, which kind of exposed a gap, really, in the what do we do with women who are saying they don't want to leave, but they are still very, very much in a vulnerable position. In that case, I made myself available and tried to take the advice and guidance from Women's Aid and do the work myself because I had built the relationship with her. Housing, absolutely Nottingham as a system were not going to flex or give her a chance. And we did end up going to a different local authority where she did get given a chance. So it's sort of like a bit confusing. One local authority won't help, the other one will, but that takes you out of your support network. It means you've got to change all your professionals, etc. Really hard. Adult social care services, obviously, I'm keen to assess that Pam has needs of her own, and she's got significant mental health problems, none of which were being treated while she was in this homeless situation. And she also has seizures, which were pretty much unknown about, you know, or understood, probably related to her substance use over the years. She got a CGL recovery worker, which is the substance use service in Nottinghamshire, who was failing to engage with Pam, telling me that she'd sent her several text messages and Pam had told her that she'd recovered. That was the end of that until I put pressure on to get a more higher level service involved. And there was a CGL housing support person as well, but not at the level that it wasn't working at first. So we go on to the next slide. You can see here, obviously, there's so many people involved. It just wasn't knitting together. So persevering together, Pam and the team identified her strengths. Working closely with Pam and the team, we were able to move quickly when a time-limited opportunity presented itself and Ken was remanded in custody for several serious crimes, including robbery. Until Ken was removed from the situation, Pam did not really engage consistently with anyone, but the team were able to use the time apart to help Pam to identify what was happening and what she wanted. Whilst Ken was in custody, the team moved to make a time-critical intervention and used MEAM funding to place her in a hotel out of Nottinghamshire. Probation were able to flex their approach to keep Ken in custody whilst accommodation plans were made to keep Pam and the baby safe. And the out-of-area housing authority, where the hotel was, accepted their duty towards her as someone fleeing domestic abuse, but was placed back in Nottinghamshire. So even though she went to another area, they placed her in temporary accommodation back into an area where she didn't really want to be in. The hotel that they put her in isn't even used by that local district council because it's got such a bad reputation. It was across the road from the car park that I have just told you about, that she jumped off in recent times. And she was housed, put opposite a man who was using crack. So it really wasn't a very good time. I really stepped up my presence and was taking hot dinners and keeping her motivated, but she was probably using substances again, even though her pregnancy was now moving further on. Pam's now said that her ties with but finally, and this is really cutting a long story short, guys, we managed to negotiate, and through working so closely with children's services and for talking about the MEAM and talking about the impact that we can have on the outcome for the baby, children's services agreed to place her in a mother and baby unit. And that was the beginning of where we are now. She said that she wants to sever her ties with Ken, and she's agreed to work with the drug worker. She's taking part in healthy courses and sessions and opportunities at the mother and baby unit. Children's Services have fed back that the MEAM support has been of real impact to Pam. Could I have another slide, please, Carl? So headlines are, did really well. That's the smiley face. That worked really well. With engagement, we had a non-judgmental approach. We used the NDT approach, which finally brought things together with exposing those tensions between different organisations. So an extremely important learning curve. We had a positive impact, not just on Pam and the baby's outcomes, but on the culture of all the different organisations that we worked with. It worked well to be really creative, to not have a remit. I felt very free to be able to go out there and do what I needed to do to keep her engaged and not necessarily have to talk to her in office hours, because of course people with multiple disadvantage have multiple disadvantage at 9 o'clock at night as well. So we really flexed up. That's kind of led us to think that we need an out of hours phone line for the MEAM as well, but that's another story. That's all of the exciting developments that can happen. So Lincoln City flexed, they took on their duty. Children's and mother, with the mother and baby unit flexed. She would never have been given that opportunity, I've been assured, had the MEAM not been involved and the mother have had the support that we've been able to give her throughout the last few months. And there's been some flex with funding as well. People have, you know, put money into the pot where they may normally not have done. And that the MEAM itself was able to fund that hotel, which gave us that circuit breaker. Barriers are going to be quite obvious. Health, housing. Oh, the work's too hard. Mental health, the geography of it all, practices in different areas and different policies. Feeling helpless at times was a barrier, not getting enough support. Challenges, that's the two little stick men there. We've got health was a big challenge, remains so. I can't go into detail because of time. Getting people on board. MDTs were a challenge as well as a success. Different people's agendas, people's culture, and resources are a massive challenge when there's nothing out there to actually help us with somebody with such special set of needs. And the opportunities, and that's the key in the star there, is for peer support. We had some really good examples of me being able to get support from people that I wouldn't normally have got because I was in a wider group of people, an MDT, and we kind of created our own support network and family. Space to reflect. People getting on board. The can-do attitude rather than the can't do is a great opportunity. I think, Princess, you talked about that in your presentation as well. And opportunities for roles to be defined and responsibilities, and for us to get back to what's important and keeping the person at the centre of what we're doing and supporting people, not destroying people. Don't set people up to fail, that kind of attitude. Can I have the next slide, please, Carl? These are a couple of text messages. I won't read them out, but the first one is the day before Pam was due to be coming out of hospital. She still was not given any information about what was happening to her. This is a woman that had had 2 children removed previously. She's anxious. She's got emotionally unstable disorder. And she wrote, "It's not fair on any of us. It's the day before I'm discharged and I don't know where my son is going." I told her to hold on. Good news is on its way. But I'd been told that I wasn't allowed to tell her about the baby unit until the Monday. You know, so information being kept back from her, but actually we were re-traumatizing her. That was interesting. Then she moved. Hey, all moved in. Still waiting to wake up. Is it all a dream? This place is incredible. I'm so, so grateful for this opportunity. Going to take something to get used to all these staff and about, but I'm basically going to, you know, go for it. Brilliant. Me, music to my ears. Pam. Next slide. Sorry, and this one is lovely. Being able to go food shopping without worrying if I have enough left over for drugs is the best feeling ever. I treated myself with a large tub of salted caramel ice cream, but shh, love this new life. How good do you think that made me feel? Can I have the next slide, please, Carl? Apart from Pam. This was the letter, the email from social care. I won't read it. I'll just highlight that the social worker, 10 years of being in children's safeguarding, picked up Pam's case and already made her mind up that I was going to be removing that baby when it arrived. I managed to help her to think differently about that, as she goes on to describe. Without you working alongside me and being on Pam's shoulder, lifting her up and supporting her to push through her past traumas and the prejudging thoughts of professionals, you have transformed a lost cause clear-cut removal to give Pam the opportunity to parent her baby. And that's what we've done. We've created an opportunity. It's going to be about up to Sam. It's her choice, it's her freedom, it's her life, but we've definitely managed to create an opportunity. And there were times during those months where I honestly thought that without taking her into my own home, I don't know what else I'd do. I mean, I wouldn't do that, Greg, but that was the kind of feeling that I had. What kind of a world are we living in that we'd leave a pregnant woman on the streets? A very vulnerable woman, very, very vulnerable indeed. So I've loved watching you challenge systems in meetings and being part of real change. And that's been lovely to be part of. So it kind of like that energy and that positivity was transferred to another service as well. Next slide, please. I'll be as quick as I can. So Pam let me take this photograph of her. She rolled her sleeve up on purpose because we wanted to be arty. And she wanted me to be able to say that this woman has been on a journey and here she is with her baby, both together. That wasn't going to happen. We do need to continue with consistency. And there is a lot of hard work to do. Next slide, please. And I left her still with no mental health specific support. I gave her a book called Wild Embers, and anybody working with people with severe and multiple disadvantage might want to look that up. And within this book, there's little poems. An example is there. I'm not going to read it because of time, obviously. But finally, I will open the doors and welcome myself home. You get the gist. Every page is full of an inspirational and supportive poem. I told her, read one when you feel like it. Don't read the book all in one go. Just pick it up or at the end of the day. And she said that's the best help for her personality, her emotionally unstable personality disorder that she could wish for. and she's working very hard on managing how she responds to others. So, and I've left her with the thought of believing in herself and forgiving herself. I think that's the last slide, is it, Carl?
It is indeed, yeah. Thanks so much for that, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I feel really moved by, well, both your presentations. I think they're both really powerful stories there. So we do have a couple of questions, but Carl, is there anything you want to kick us off with in terms of questions?
Yeah, well, I thought, I mean, just to echo Greg's comments, incredibly powerful from both of you, and really bringing home why we do this work and why we take the approach that we do. I think that you both set out the challenges that individuals face initially, and how working in a slightly different way, feeling more empowered as a frontline worker and being able to, you know, work in partnership across boundaries, how you're able to sort of take a slightly different approach and ultimately lead to better outcomes. So I really appreciate you both coming along and talking us through those. Thank you. What was interesting for me in that was the sense of, and I think it came out within the email that you showed as well, Sarah, from the social worker, in terms of almost a relief, if you like, or, you know, an outpouring of some form of emotion, where a person who does this work has felt enclosed, or, you know, felt that the barriers have been, you know, unsurmountable, and then being able to overcome those challenges and those barriers is ultimately demonstrating why people go into work in this space anyway. And so there's just a question for me around how being able to take a more wider systemic view, how that has impacted on your well-being, and I'll be interested to hear from you, Sarah, and you, Princess, on how it's impacted on your well-being, your sense of being able to get into this work, you know, having autonomy to drive some changes. And I recognise that's not, you know, this isn't like a silver bullet, one-stop fix thing. I'm sure that there are still many challenges, but I just wonder if you've recognised any impact at all on your own well-being.
I think the result is really that's the prize, but it doesn't always happen. There's been people in our cohort that haven't managed to make the changes, and we also need to manage how we exit from having such powerful relationships with people, which we're still grappling with and thinking about. I do think there's a lot of talk, Carl, about supporting staff. But I think in reality, we've got a lot of work to get better at doing it. I know that my experience has been very much Sarah's, you know, Sarah's tough, Sarah's fine, Sarah will get on with it if you want a job doing that. But actually, there've been moments where I've really thought I'm getting it wrong. I knew I was going to be the resource. I knew I was going to pour every bit of energy into this. But when systems weren't supporting and common sense was never prevailing, it felt really, you know, like you were back in that place where you get beaten down by the system. But I feel as I'm getting more involved in the work that I'm starting to definitely understand where to go for help. And we are keen to create the right spaces. In Nottinghamshire, I've created a huddle for people working with SMD. So you can get peer support every Wednesday morning, guys, at 9 o'clock. I'm live and direct with a couple of social workers where we invite people in to come and talk about their case. Sorry, not cases, because we don't say cases in Nottinghamshire anymore. We say our people. And, you know, and we'll talk things through, but also remind the worker that what they're doing is something extra. This is about recognising that there are a lot of people out there putting 110% in, and they're feeling you know, unsupported. So we've tried to create a space for them to come where they can be recognised and
Yeah, thanks.
encouraged to carry on.
Thanks, Sarah. I think you sort of get into the heart of some of the challenges there. On one hand, yes, more autonomy and that can feel good. On the other hand, this is on top of your day job often, and can create, you know, a lot of pressures there. So thanks for that. And Princess, do you have any reflections on that at all in terms of
Yeah, I can actually what Sarah said really resonates with me. I've just got a small team. We're just a small little team of which, you know, when we face our challenges, we don't only have that reflective practice every month. It's like every day we're ringing up each other to say, this has bored me out, this has trashed me out. We just support each other. And the fact that meeting up with these other agencies or other organizations is quite challenging, at the fact that we're given that opportunity to drill into them and then get to listen to us. I think that's the best part of it, that the word succumb shouldn't really be used, but yes, they succumb to what we do. You know, they actually understand us. We used to be those people, those busybodies, those do-gooders, but now they can reason with us, which is quite helpful and comforting that they're listening. I think that's the main thing, that people are now listening. We've got an organization that we work with called Reset 21 that we lend an ear to whenever things are difficult for us. You know, we just book ourselves in for a session and just flex it out or shake it out. So that's one of the good things that's happening. And the fact that we're supporting people with multiple disadvantage and, you know, getting somewhere with them is a comfort for me as well. It's like, yeah, I've done something a little good today. And that is, you know, one thing about working with me. I've enjoyed it. I'm still enjoying it. So yeah, not much.
I'm just going to backtrack. There were a couple of questions earlier. So it's also for you, Princess. Did client X have a probation officer?
Yes, he actually had 2 that were working with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have they come on board with a shift in how they're working?
They
now
really
then?
have. They really have. An example is he did misbehave. So he had an alcohol tag, was still drinking alcohol, but the alcohol wasn't reading on the tag. So they had that opportunity to recall him. But we put before them that we're working with him and other agencies are working with him. So they put that recall on the back burner. So if we hadn't mentioned that MEAM is working with him and the whole cohort of people are working with him, he would have been back into prison after a few weeks. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's you're able to. It sounds like the quality of your relationship with the probation officers made it possible for you them to think about doing something slightly different at that point.
Definitely. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And Sarah, the quality of relationships in what you were doing as well really stood out as being the transformative key, really, in terms of your with professionals.
Yeah, I mean, you said that walking alongside and letting other professionals know that, well, you know, I'm here to support through the systems. I'm not going to go away because whatever happens, I'm walking by this person's side. But like Princess, it seems to be filtering through. I also think that there's an appetite for individuals that are working for very strict organisations. So I've sort of met housing officers that feel very, very compromised by what they're personally with what they're doing, you know, when they're not flexing up, but they've got such a strong direction from their superiors to quote only duty and law. That they, you know, so I think that's an interesting angle as well, because what we're talking about, Princess and I, is working with human kindness, compassion, being able to tap in, understand, not judge people and see the person. And most, you know, at the back of the pandemic, at the back of Black Lives Matters, where we've been thinking about our unconscious bias and our attitude, it's become a little bit more, well, actually, if you're not in our gang, you're not very cool. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's probably going to work in our favour. I mean, that's probably really badly put. Apologies, guys. But, you know, it's got to be said that people don't want to look like they're not going to be compassionate about people that are homeless or disadvantaged.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is something MEAM really focuses on, is like, what are the values that drew you into this work originally? And sometimes I know Carl and I sit down with senior bigwigs and systems and say, what was it that made you start this work? And oh, right, you started as a support worker in 1984. Okay, what was it that made you do that then? And it's always people came into this work, I'd say nearly always, because they wanted to make the world a better place and create some healing, and to feel good when they go home at night and go to sleep, and they've done the best they can. So yeah,
it's helping them keep in touch with their own personal values, and I think that's kind of a privilege, because we can have conversations with people about how they feel. You wouldn't normally use words like that. But you've just put me in mind of where the Prime Minister to be is, or the existing one is often asked, you know, what drives you, and say, well, my dad was a greengrocer, and but they've lost touch. So it's about helping people really remember, isn't it, and keep in touch with why they do what they do.
Regain that connection. So there's a couple of other questions I just want to go out. So can this approach work with a small scale service, and can it fit in when funding is for a tendered project with specific targets and goals? That might be more for me and Carl, that one, really. I guess MEAM is an approach. It's a learning approach as well. So it's not necessarily, whilst both Sarah and Princess are doing casework, the focus is not necessarily the outcomes for those individuals. It's about learning what their experience of the system is, so that you can draw that learning back into operational and strategic spaces to really reshape the system. So yes, I think that can be done within small services and within existing structures, planned work that's already tendered. It's about the frame of mind of your frontline practitioners, the ensuring they feel empowered to capture the learning and to have the spaces to take that and use that to try and reshape their systems. Sarah, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I really understand that, because of the journey that I've been on, and me thinking, oh, this isn't sustainable. We'll never be able to sustain this, and we don't want to create a specialism, because that means that we'll be creating a system. And in Nottinghamshire, we've got no money. There's nobody going to give us a team to work with people. We're testing and learning, doing the deep diving, and what our next steps, just for interest, our thinking is that we'll be able to create more of a surgery type approach to SMD, so that we can have people make referrals in, and we guide and stick by them and take the learning that we have in order to, and we can act as linkage between different organisations, because we've learned how to talk in a different language, and we've learned how to build trust. So I today, for example, managed to, you know, talk to somebody and got a result out of it that I wouldn't have done a year ago. So it's that we're going to have to farm the culture and the attitudes, because there isn't going to be posts to do what I did.
It's very much about not creating another silo of specialist work, but about learning from this work how to do things differently across the system, and
find social justice across the system, because it's very much about, you know, discrimination and judgment.
And there's one question in the Q&A. So the MEAM approach is excellent, but how can services put this into practice with frontline workers having such heavy caseloads? I mean, I feel as though we've touched on that slightly. It's about, it has to be, the focus is on systems change, so that ultimately frontline workers don't have heavy caseloads that are unrealistic and unachievable. and using it to shape and create that mandate for change there. Yeah.
I'd say don't be afraid
yeah.
to challenge as well. If you see something that isn't right, no matter what job role you're in or how heavy your caseload is, you know, write it down, send it off, escalate it, challenge it, and start to empower yourselves to feel like, you know, you need to say the right thing in the right at the right juncture. It's going to be slow, and I totally appreciate that you're not going to be able to bash down these juggernauts of systems, but you know, baby steps.
Yeah. Princess, any thoughts? We need to wind towards the end now. But
I just commenting on what Sarah just said. The fact that most of these systems have been around for donkey years, and there has to be a change, and you can be that person to make that change. You know, the people that hold the system don't even know how long it's been there, and they have not recognized that there needs to be a change. So you will be that person to make that change. First step forward, and you know, you make the change.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I say to people I work with often, you know, this change isn't going to happen overnight as well.
No.
You will get small changes, and you need to celebrate those, build on those, and be loud about your successes. But it's taken a long time to create the systems we've got, and it will take us a good bit of time to unpick those and really bin them, do something new.
Yeah.
Carl, what are your thoughts?
Yes, it's similar thoughts, of course. I think on those final two questions are both quite similar, weren't they? The question around sort of how do frontline workers really, you know, work within this space, having such heavy workloads and, you know, small scale services. Just to say on that, we do work with so some of our partnerships are led by the voluntary sector. But what we seek to do is establish a learning ecosystem, if you like. So as Greg said, this is very much about systemic change, wider systemic change. And so the partnerships that we seek to create often involve the voluntary sector, the statutory organisations from across those different sectors, but also various different roles within that as well. So, you know, we bring in commissioners into the fold, placing them alongside people who work on a front line, embedding within that partnership people with lived experience, and really driving a sort of a new narrative and a new culture, a new way of thinking among a group of people who collectively have a lot of influence to drive wider systems change within their areas. So it is very much about sort of extracting the learning from the front line, but then ensuring that learning has somewhere to go. And that's really what's sort of embedded within our overall approach, really.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being a very attentive audience. There are some links in the chat. So feedback forms for this session and information about the training from the Frontline Network. Please jump on that, make the most of it. MEAM provides training if you want to get some funding from us to link up with the Frontline Network. Carl has just put in the presentation there a thing.
I'm flicking through various slides here, Greg. Yeah, but some top tips here. So we will of course share the slides, and I think it's already in the chat about how you can access those slides anyway. Some top tips that we just put across there. Greg just mentioned some of the work that we do and you know what that looks like. So that's in this slide here. You know, with the training, systems consultancy, partnership development, things like that. There's some further reading here with some links in the slide as well, so feel free to have a look and dig into those. And finally, if we could just ask anyone who's able and willing and would like to, if you scan the QR code here, you'll be able to complete a really short survey, just giving your name and the details. And then you can request further information from MEAM on the various offers that we have, and also, you know, we'll share these slides with you, and we can link you into your local areas as well. So feel free to do that. Failing that, give myself or Greg a shout, and we'll gladly have a chat with you all.
Thank you, Princess. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for bringing yourselves, your heart, your passion,
Thank you.
and all this wonderful work that you've been doing, and really talking so candidly about it, and the ups, the downs, the successes, and the struggles. It's been really powerful. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye.
Great. I think we're out of time. Let's
Yeah.
take care, everyone.
Yeah, bye.
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 Bye, everyone.